Hi, this is Kogito, and I'm back with another Through the Ages video. In the last video, we covered this game, where I ended up third, and DB Storman and El Chupacabra both tied for first, which is not something you see every day. In this video, I will be covering the second four-player game in this third round of the World Championships, which will obviously be with the same four players. So without further ado, let's take a look. In this game, I'm playing first, and we can take a quick look at the leaders and wonders. In Age 3, there's a Hollywood plus Marlena and Charlie Chaplin, so especially in a peaceful game, the only theater leader in Age 2 is Antoni Gaudi, or the only culture leader, so there's not a huge amount of culture synergy, but there's some, so something to keep in mind for sure. There's also Einstein and Pierre plus Internet, so that's something to keep in mind. Steve Jobs and Marie Curie are two other science leaders along with Einstein. There is no spaceflight, but there is a Manhattan Project, as well as a Red Cross. In Age 2, there's some power combos. There's Maria Theresa plus Ocean Liner Service. There's James Watt plus Transcontinental Railroad. Especially without Newton, that means that alchemies are a little better in Age 1, so you can get coals in Age 2. There's also Nobel as a strong economic leader, and Napoleon and Robespierre for military actions. Age 1, no military action leaders. There are some good wonders, though, especially Silk Road, Great Wall, and Machu Picchu. St. Peter's Basilica, maybe with the theater synergy in Age 3. Like I said, not a lot of military in Age 1, though. As for my first turn, since I'm playing first, I have to pick which one of these to take. I think it's a pretty straightforward choice. I think Hammurabi is definitely the most powerful card in this row. Acropolis, with consideration with the theater synergy in Age 3, maybe if there was a Bach, for example, in Age 2, Acropolis could be more strongly considered, but I think without that, Hammurabi is still better. Better than Ashoka, when I'm playing first, especially. So, yeah, I think that's pretty easy. DB Starman takes Ashoka and the Acropolis. Interesting choice. Like I said, I can't see the Acropolis with the theater synergy in H3. Ashoka, when playing second, maybe a little more questionable. I might have taken Moses myself, but Ashoka can definitely be a very strong leader if you can get him to work. Sakech takes the Colossus. There is a Suez Canal in H2, so that makes sense. Chupacabra takes Hanging Gardens, the only window left, plus a rich land. Doesn't like Moses, that's understandable. I actually kind of like Moses more than the average person, but he's kind of redundant with the Hanging Gardens. As for my turn, after electing Hammurabi, I have a little bit of an interesting choice to make. Namely, I think whether I want the Colosseum or the Roman roads here as my wonder. Now, it's notable here that all of my opponents took wonders, which means I don't have to take a wonder this turn. I can delay to the following turn and still be guaranteed one. Now, the Colosseum does definitely go well with Hammurabi, but I think there's maybe a more notable reason, well, especially at least not to take it this turn, which is there's an engineering genius here. Now, it is available for 3 civil actions. That's a lot for an engineering genius. But I think, first of all, with Hammurabi, I can afford spending a little extra civil actions to get power cards. That's one of the benefits of Hammurabi. And second of all, the engineering genius plays particularly well with the Roman roads, because it means if I take the engineering genius and build a mine, then next turn, theoretically, the Roman roads will most likely be available for me for 1 civil action, so I could just take the Roman roads and finish it on my next turn thanks to the engineering genius. And I thought that leaving myself open that possibility was worth spending the civil actions here. If I hadn't done this, I might have, say increased my population, and maybe taken the Colosseum, maybe an urban growth, and frugality, that, you know, 2 A yellow cards that aren't engineering genius, not the best, but, you know, could be fine. But like I said earlier, I think the combination of engineering genius with the Roman roads being able to potentially finish the Roman roads next turn just felt too strong for me, really taking advantage of the extra civil actions from Hammurabi and the card race situation. I drew a Phalanx, DB Starman, elects Ashoka, increases the population, builds a mine, and takes an urban growth. That is a logical turn to me. Sakech builds a mine, increases the population, takes Aristotle, and an urban growth. Interesting, notable, takes an urban growth instead of electing Aristotle. It is true that Aristotle, they can always elect Aristotle next turn, and it'll essentially be the same as electing him this turn. So what this is really doing is it's spending a civil action on the urban growth. So essentially, Sakic is spending a civil action this turn to take this urban growth at the cost of having one fewer civil action next turn. I think that is probably not worth it most of the time. You can sort of think of this as like an Age A civil action, and Age 1 civil actions are much more powerful than Age A civil actions. So I think that odds are Sakic will find something better to do with that civil action next turn than taking this urban growth, but we'll see what the situation is like on the next turn. Chupacabra takes an iron for 2 civil actions. That makes sense to me. Builds a mine, increases the population. Again, logical turn. Now it's my turn. I did want to take this Roman roads. I think I do that play that I mentioned previously. Maybe I don't. But first of all, you can ask, do I want to take the Roman roads or the Colosseum? And I think the Colosseum definitely plays well with Hammurabi, obviously, with the 3rd military action. It's also generally a pretty good card in 4-player games, I think, because in 4-player games, it's hard. You can't guarantee getting a constitutional monarchy because there's only 2 of them, so other players might take them. So leaving yourself open to getting a republic with having a 3rd military action elsewhere is always valuable to do. So I think the Colosseum would definitely be a good card here. But I do think with Hammurabi Hammurabi also has strong synergy with the Roman roads, and I think it's just in general a more powerful wonder. So I decided to take the Roman roads instead. Now the question is, do I want to do that play I mentioned last turn where I just finish it this turn? And I think that would definitely be strong to do, especially with the Silk Road on the road that I might want. So I think, yeah, I do it. An alternate play would be maybe take the Brennan Circuses. There is Pierre in the game. Now, before any developments have been revealed, not knowing if I'll get a development of religion, it's a little harder to just, it's a little tough to take this, especially if it's 2 civil actions, but it could be done. Irrigation could also potentially be a nice card to have. It does pair well with the Ocean Liner service. There isn't Barbarossa or anything like that in Age 1. There's a Machu Picchu, though, so there's some irrigation synergy, so that could also be considered. But I think overall, especially with the Silk Road on the row, I thought that with Hammurabi, I definitely have the civil actions to afford the Silk Road. So by taking and finishing the Roman roads this turn, I leave myself open the possibility of taking the Silk Road next turn. None of my opponents are going to take it. And so, because I want to leave open that possibility, I decided, and I think this is just in general a strong play to make. Obviously, getting the Roman roads going really early gives me a ton of extra resources. I draw an aggression. DB Starman builds 1 stage of the Acropolis instead of the lab, interestingly. Takes the Brennan Circuses and the irrigation. I guess DB Starman wants to leave a worker open for development of warfare or religion, which I get to an extent, and with the Acropolis giving a science discount on the governments, maybe the 2nd lab is less important. They're not taking the printing press, so that's not their plan. So, it kind of makes sense. It's not what I would do, but I get the logic. Sakic seeds the first card, reveals the development of trade routes. Elects Aristotle, takes a cartography, builds a lab, and takes another AJ yellow card. So Sakic has spent 2 civil actions this game on AJ yellow cards. Not generally where you want to be. We can see that if Sakic had not taken the urban growth last turn, then this turn they would have had an extra civil action and could have spent it, for example, well, I guess there aren't that many exciting cards to take for that matter. Cartography may be a little redundant with the Colossus. I think if Sakic, for example, had Aristotle elected already, they could have built the lab and then maybe taken the knights. That at least would have been another possibility. So, kind of a hard turn for Sakic, though. Chupacabra takes Cleopatra, finally gets their leader going, a turn later than they would have liked, obviously, but can still get some value out of her with a lab and then increases the population. Goes into consumption early, but leaves themselves open for developments. As for my turn, I don't have any cards to seed. I wouldn't have seeded even if I did, want an available population. As for my turn, I think it's probably pretty straightforward. I guess the main question actually is, do I want to take the Silk Road? Because I think I'm going to increase my population. Probably going to increase my population 2 times and build a lab to get myself out of corruption. So the question is what to do with my remaining 2 civil actions. And it's basically a question between, do I want the Silk Road or do I want the Knights? Silk Road would definitely be very good for me with, as I said, with Hammurabi, I can complete it more easily, and it's generally a powerful wonder to get if you can afford the civil action cost. On the other hand, I already have a Knight's Tactic in my hand. We saw in my last 4-player game that not taking an early Knights can definitely lead to issues, especially in a 4-player game, if you can't get a good tactic going early. So I think both of them would be defensible cards to take. Probably, looking at it right now, I lean towards the Knights. Let's see what I actually end up doing. I do take the Knights, yeah. It is a shame to give up the Silk Road. Now, there are, however, some other good wonders, potentially. Well, I'm not getting the St. Peter's Basilica either, but Great Wall and Machu Picchu are also both potential wonders I could get. But it's definitely kind of sucks not taking the Silk Road. We'll actually might see later how the Silk Road would have been pretty helpful for me, but the Knights is also obviously a very important card, especially since I have a Knight's Tactic in my hand already. So, close decision, Knights is probably, it's definitely the safer card to take. I draw Raiders, DB Strumman finishes Acropolis, increases the population twice, and takes a rich land, so still delaying the second lab. Might make it a little harder to spend the Ashoka resources delaying this lab so much, I'm not sure. I mean, the rich land could definitely be good, but still feels like the lab is being delayed a lot to me. Plays the Legion Tactic. Sakich Seeds reveals the development of science. Increases the population twice to get out of corruption. Takes a theology to have a happy face solution in their hand. And also takes a reserves. Not so sure about this. I think Sakich has already spent 2 civil action on these AJ yellow cards, so this is getting pretty civil action heavy. I think probably building 1 stage of the Colossus instead would have been better. Chupacabra Seeds reveals a development of planning. The options are development of religion, markets, and warfare. So religion is probably the power one. Both religion, no one is can't get both religion and warfare, notably. Chupacabra, however, takes development of markets, notably instead of religion. Because that lets El Chupacabra upgrade 2 mines as well as spend the clear resource on 1 stage of the Hanging Gardens. So that makes sense that El Chupacabra wanted the development of markets. That it's basically giving them 3 rocks because they get another iron upgrade earlier. Now this does leave an iron. In addition, by not taking any cards from the row, I have to spend 2 civil actions on the iron. I still want to do this. Obviously, I can upgrade the iron twice now with 6 rocks, so that felt like a strong turn to me. Really get my economy going earlier. Didn't really see a particular reason. I did, however, take the development of warfare instead of religion. Notably. The reason I did that is because I was a little worried about my military situation with Hammurabi, right? Because in order to get the Phalanx tactic going, without the development of warfare, I would need to spend 3 military actions, right? On 1 warrior, 1 knight, and playing the Phalanx tactic. And this turn, I'm not spending my science on the knights, I'm spending my science on the iron, so I can get my upgrades going earlier. Which I think makes sense because the deck isn't flipped yet, so I don't need to worry about military yet, but I will need to worry about it soon. And what that means is if I hadn't taken the development of warfare, then next turn, since I only have 1 military action available if I use Hammurabi, then I'll only be able to build like a warrior or a knight. And the following turn, you know, maybe I'll have replaced Hammurabi by then, but if I haven't, then I will only be able to do 1 more. So that was just feeling like it was going to take too long to get my military going. And so instead I preferred to so in that sense I felt that the military action with Hammurabi, right, the military action and the civil action are basically the same thing. And so the development of religion is not actually saving me a civil action over the development of warfare. It is saving me 1 rock, but I'll already have a lot of rocks from getting the iron upgrades. And in addition, it should be noted that by doing my turn in this way, where I get these iron upgrades, I won't be taking this theology, and it's the 2nd copy of theology. So that means that the best happy face solution, the only happy face solution for me in Age 1 is going to be the bread and circuses. And so the development of religion is not actually going to be that good for me because I need to put a second population into the bread and circuses anyway for my happy face solution. And so for those reasons, I thought that while it's rare, the development of warfare was better than the development of religion for me. I might discard the aggression. I didn't see that this is barely keeping me out of corruption, and as Hammurabi, I want to slow roll the event deck anyway. I draw another tactic, a fighting band. DB Starman does take the development of religion, increases the population, finally builds the second lab, and takes an iron. So their economy is a little slow developing, but they do compensate for that with Ashoka. Sakich also takes the development of religion, plays a patriotism to build a second warrior, and also takes Isabella and Elixir. Builds one stage of the Colossus. Could have finished it this turn, but instead chooses to take a rich land. Again, a lot of civil actions are being spent on yellow cards. The rich land, at least, is less civil action intensive than the reserves. Also, okay, yeah, it is important for Sakich to take the rich land because they missed out on the irons. So they'll definitely need the rich land for the coals. So this was the right decision, just the reserves last turn. If they hadn't taken this, they would have been able to finish the Colossus this turn, which definitely would have been, well, I guess it'll take a little bit for the event deck to flip. So maybe finishing the Colossus this turn wouldn't have been necessary, but it also would have freed up a civil action the following turn. Plays the Legion tactic. Chupacabra builds another stage of the Hanging Gardens, takes an Elect Saladin for one civil action, notably neither DB Starman nor Sakich took Saladin, so El Chupacabra gets him for one civil action, increases the population, and takes a breakthrough. So El Chupacabra definitely got two very strong cards for one civil action. So for my turn, so that's a Raiders, right? So I decided to see that I felt that with my Phalanx tactic, I had a fair chance of not being hit by the Raiders. I wanted to have one. It's generally you want to have at least one card in an event deck by you, just so like you have some idea of what's coming and you can prepare for it, and your opponents are less able to prepare for it. So I felt that with the Phalanx tactic, I felt a little bit confident that I could, not lose to the Raiders. And also, I have so many resources that maybe losing to the Raiders wouldn't be a huge deal either. And like I said, I wanted to get the cut out there. I revealed development of agriculture. So I also made sure that my turn wouldn't leave me in corruption if a resources event is revealed. So as for my turn, I think the two important things to do are finish my iron mine upgrades and also take the bread and circuses. The question is what else to do. Well, okay, the event deck is about to flip, so I also wanted to build a knights. So I need to increase my population 2 times to do that, because this one was unhappy. That lets me get the knights. So it leaves me strongest, at least temporarily. So now I have 2 civil actions left. I still have enough rocks to... Oh, right, so instead of finishing upgrading my iron mines, I instead take these 2 cards. The bread and circuses I think is necessary. The monarchy is more of the question is, do I want... So I think, yeah, it's definitely important to get the knight this turn so that next turn I can put the Phalanx tactic. And bread and circus is a necessary card. So I think the question is really between monarchy or finishing upgrading my mines. The logic with the monarchy, obviously, is that as Hammurabi, I can potentially do a revolution next turn with the monarchy. If no resource event gets revealed, then I will lose 4 blue cubes. Yeah, so potentially I could do a revolution next turn and get out of corruption by increasing my population and building another knight. It's maybe a little questionable. I mean, maybe it could be fine. It does delay my iron mine upgrades a little bit. I'm starting to question this monarchy more now that I look at it. Now that I look at the situation, it feels that a revolution next turn is optimistic. Because, yeah, I'd have to spend 4 blue cubes, so I can't just do a revolution and finish upgrading my mines. So even if I did... So if I did do a revolution next turn, I would be delaying my mine upgrades even further. So it's kind of already costing me 2 rocks to take this monarchy. There's still 2 copies of Code of Laws left. I mean, monarchy is good with Hammurabi, but also I'm probably going to be losing Hammurabi pretty soon. I am not getting alchemies, so getting a Code of Laws with the monarchy looking unlikely. There's no Forbidden City to pair with it either. So looking at it now, the monarchy actually feels like kind of a weak card, and I think it would have been better for me to upgrade my last mine instead. We'll see how it works out for me, though. DB Starman Seas reveals his development of politics. Increase the population. Develops the iron. Builds a warrior. 2 warriors, so they're strongest now. And is still able to upgrade 1 iron mine. Take those Roseman instead of upgrading the second one. I think that makes sense. With investing this heavily into infantry, getting an infantry tech is important for them. Socketch Seeds reveals the development of crafts. The event deck flips. Socketch plays a cartography, takes an alchemy. You definitely want to have that alchemy. Can finish the Colossus, increase the population, and build a 3rd warrior to get out of corruption, I believe. So Socketch is now the strongest. This seems like a good turn from them. Chupacabra takes the knights. Does leave the knights for El Chupacabra, though, which El Chupacabra godly takes, plays with breakthrough, builds the knights, plays a medieval army tactic. I'm now the weakest. Increase the population, finishes the Hanging Gardens, and finishes upgrading the iron mine. So this seems like a good turn from them. Anyway, I do end up not doing the revolution. Obviously, I would now not be able to do it without corruption, thanks to the resource event that was revealed. Instead, I take Nostradamus. I think he is... Yeah, Columbus would be really risky to play. Michelangelo, I'm not really set up for. So I do think Nostradamus is the right card to take, is the best leader left for me in my position. And I wanted to take him before DB Starman could, so I do need to spend 2 civil actions on him. And I think I do elect him because the event deck just flipped, so by electing Nostradamus this turn, I am able to have full knowledge of the following event deck. Yeah, I also get out of corruption by finishing upgrading my mines and increasing my population. Now, unfortunately, by doing this, I am not able to take the Great Wall. And so one kind of eventuality that I arrived at is that I finished upgrading my iron mines, but I missed out on the Silk Road, as well as these other wonders, which means that if I want to spend these resources on an Age 1 wonder, the Great Wall is almost certainly going to be taken before my next turn, so it would kind of have to be the Machu Picchu. So that's one downside of playing this turn this way. So I could have done this turn... Okay, I guess I couldn't have done this turn. The problem is... Yeah, I could have done this turn because I have 1 civil action left. So I could have taken the Great Wall this turn and left Nostradamus. Maybe with the Great Wall, I could have potentially... Michelangelo would have been alright, especially with the all the resource income I have from the Roman roads and the iron mines. I do have the potential to get multiple wonders with Michelangelo. So I think another path that I could have considered is, instead of Nostradamus, taking the Great Wall. Looking at it now, that probably would have been better. Also, if I hadn't taken the monarchy last turn, then this turn I would have had an extra civil action that I could have used along with 2. Yeah, I think I still wouldn't have been able to take both Nostradamus and Great Wall, but I would have had more leeway to take the Great Wall and leave Nostradamus. Yeah, so I think taking the monarchy last turn, we're seeing the costs of this. And I'm sort of speaking from hindsight, as you'll see, as to the weakness in my game future, but the Great Wall, I think, definitely would have been a very helpful wonder for me to have. And so I think I didn't consider it as strong as I should have, because I do think it pairs pretty well with Michelangelo, and Michelangelo would be good for me considering all the extra resources I have. So I should have considered that a lot more strongly than I think I did. Anyway, I did draw Medieval Army Tactics, so I played that instead of the Phalanx. I will have an extra population to put into Knights, so this will end up giving me more strength than the Phalanx. I spent my last civil action, though, on the Alchemy. I think especially, I was starting to worry at this point about spending my resources, right? And so the Alchemy at least gives me something I can spend my resources on next turn, so I thought that was pretty important. I discard tactics. I kept this tactic because I thought that the other two tactics I was not going to use, but potentially I could see myself if I ship these warriors off to a colony, then I could see myself, you know, I'll be able to have one extra population this turn. So I do have the possibility of building 2 more knights and getting a heavy cavalry tactic. So I thought that, so I kept that tactic. DB Starman does take the Great Wall, I think that's right, and upgrades a mine, builds a warrior. Does take corruption though, so they do have to spend a fair bit to take this Great Wall, but especially with all their warriors, it's gonna be a very good wonder for them. Sakich plays the alchemy, upgrades twice, takes an urban growth. They will definitely be able to use this urban growth on the theology, so that makes sense to me. Chupacabra notably took the strength with Saladin instead of the civil action. Sees to reveal a wealthy territory. I don't have any bonus cards, so, and Sakich has the Colossus and the cartography, so they're definitely gonna be winning colonies for the foreseeable future. Chupacabra takes the alchemy, builds another army, so now they're the strongest, and is also able to upgrade to 1 alchemy and increases the population. And now they feel comfortable taking the civil action because they're the strongest anyway. I do, obviously as Nostradamus, I want to see it as much as I can, and I think the uncertain borders, I probably won't win it, but I will almost certainly not lose to it, so I think it's a fine card to seed. I reveal another territory that Sakich, I was willing to put more into this one with all my extra resources. I felt comfortable putting a full army into it, but Sakich was still able to win it by spending 3 rocks, so actually spending a fair amount. This is essentially... This is equivalent to putting a full army into the territory by spending 3 rocks on it. Well, almost equivalent because it's not an extra population, but it's still a fair amount to pay for the territory, especially since Sakich is on bronze mines, but they do get a few extra resources from Isabella, obviously. In order to get out of corruption, I do need to upgrade 2 labs and put a 2nd knight. At least this makes me tied with strength with Chupacabra. With Nostradamus, I'm not worried about being weakest anytime soon. As for my last civil action... yeah, I increased my population. Engineering Genius definitely could be considered, but again, with all my extra rocks, I felt like I didn't really need extra rocks. I was probably gonna be having trouble spending rocks as it is anyway. And so, with only 4 civil actions and not a lot of science, I'm gonna be wanting to put this science into a monarchy most likely at some point. I thought that, it was more important to be civil action efficient and get the civil action in than getting the engineering genius. Also, I didn't know when I would be able to spend the engineering genius. The Machu Picchu, I probably was not... I mean, maybe I might get that 2nd irrigation, but as I have a lot of rocks anyway, so... I draw a suitable event, the cultural influence. DB Starman takes a masonry and develops it, so DB Starman... putting some science in the masonry while only on philosophies. On the other hand, this will obviously be good for them in finishing the Great Wall, so I think it's defensible. They do finish it, now they are the strongest. This does, however, give them corruption again, so DB Starman is taking corruption 2 times in a row to get this Great Wall going. A little scary. Maybe for that reason, I guess that if they wanted to finish the Great Wall this turn, they had no way of avoiding that, though. Sakich increases the population, rebuilds their legion to not be vulnerable to an aggression, plays the reserves for food, notably, which makes some sense with Isabella. Does take that engineering genius I didn't take and increases the population again. Doesn't build a 4th warrior, but I guess... oh, they didn't have the military actions for it. Right. H2 begins. Chupacabra upgrades 2nd alchemy, takes the Code of Laws and the Swordsman, notably even though they have the knights going, so looking to push strength early it seems. Builds a 3rd knight, indeed, to help with that, and a patriotism, so Chupacabra is definitely pushing strength really hard, so luckily with Nostradamus I shouldn't be too vulnerable to them. Now that we're 1 turn into H2, we can take a look at the state of the game. It's looking pretty even. DB Starman does have the culture lead and the culture production lead thanks to their 2 wonders. So that's definitely giving them some advantage. They're also not too behind in economy. We can see that in economic terms, El Chupacabra and I have the most rock productions, but DB Starman will soon tie us when they finally get their third iron upgrade in. Sakich and I also have the science advantage as well as El Chupacabra. So from an economic perspective, it looks like I and El Chupacabra are about tied. El Chupacabra does have one more civil action than me, though. But I have one more science production. Civil action is probably better. So my position is not looking too great at the moment. There's nothing that I can really point to and say this is my advantage, though Nostradamus is going to give me some more cultures. You could say that I'm a bit behind in culture, DB Starman, but I have the economic advantage. El Chupacabra probably has the economic advantage of the extra 5th civil action, but I have one more science, and I'll also get a monarchy going soon. So a pretty even state of the game right now, I think. Anyway, I do see that event, and I reveal the raiders that I previously seeded, and thanks to Nostradamus, I do not lose it. Sakach and DB Starman do. I thought it was pretty important for me to get this arena, so that I wasn't vulnerable to a rebellion. The alternative would have been taking the Machu Picchu. I think I didn't want to do that because I was a little afraid that someone might take the irrigation instead. Maybe Sakach or Chupacabra. I mean, maybe they wouldn't. So I think taking the Machu Picchu definitely should have also been a strong consideration. I think I could have... It would have been hard. Well, yeah, I could have still gotten out of corruption by taking the Machu Picchu and then building like a third night. So I think that, yeah, that was probably the thing that I was debating with. Do I want this arena? Do I want the Machu Picchu? I think I ended up selecting the arena, like I said, mainly because I was worried about a potential rebellion. I thought that DB Starman and El Chupacabra both definitely could have seeded a rebellion. It would have been riskier for Sakach. But most of these are from Sakach, so maybe a rebellion, you know, I could have risked, but it felt like a pretty big risk because I had 2 unhappy workers. Oh yeah, because I had 2 unhappy workers, I wasn't actually able to build a knight. So if I took the Machu Picchu, I also would have taken corruption. So with that being in mind, this was probably better. Because it gets me out of corruption as well. As for my last 2 civil actions, okay. Let me explain my logic here. So I was looking at the state of the game, and at this point, I was really worried about my corruption issues, because at this point, I have kind of maxed out what I can easily spend my resources on. Because I only have 1 free population left, so if I don't get a selective breeding soon that I can get some food production going, then my resources are kind of going to be sitting around not accomplishing much. The best that I can maybe do with them is putting them on a wonder, but I was not sure if I would be able to get this Machu Picchu. El Chupacabra might take it, but I also might not be able to take it, plus the irrigation. I don't know when the H2 windows will be available. And so I was basically just kind of worrying at this point, like, what am I gonna spend my resources on? And it wasn't super clear to me. And so I think my logic was basically, well, first of all, I have the free population to do this. I'm not too worried about my strength yet with Nostradamus. So I thought the 4th mine, I obviously had the resources to afford, and I thought I had the free population to afford as well. And I thought that even though the 4th mine, you know, is more likely to lead to corruption, I thought that I was gonna more likely than not have corruption issues anyway. So in that sense, the mine would kind of offset those corruption issues. So that was my logic with the 4th mine. I think that well, again, we'll see how it ends up working out for me. But in retrospect, it does feel a little too cute. It is also kind of the result of decisions I made earlier. As I pointed out, if I had, instead of taking Nostradamus, if I had taken Great Wall and planned for Michelangelo, for example, then I think I would have been in a much more comfortable position, because I would have had a wonder already that I could put my resources into. That would have been a good wonder too. So I think that I would have been in a much better position at this point if I had done the Great Wall play instead of the Michelangelo play. And sorry, instead of the Nostradamus play, but I didn't. And so in this situation, it still feels a little too cute. Now I don't have that much better dismissive actions on. I do take the Code of Laws. I think it pairs well with the monarchy. I should probably have the science for it with the alchemies and the Roman roads. If I hadn't built this, I maybe could have taken the breakthrough instead, or maybe I could have taken the Code of Laws plus the frugality to get me some extra food. Or maybe I could have taken the irrigation instead for 2 simple actions, and then planned on hoping for the Machu Picchu to be able to for me next turn. I mean, so if I had taken the irrigation instead, the Machu Picchu would have been here on DB Sturman's turn. So if no other cards were taken, it would have been here in Sakich, here in El Chupacabra. So DB Sturman and Sakich would have to take, they can't take Columbus, so they would have had to take both the Warfare and the Code of Laws in order for the Machu Picchu to be discarded after El Chupacabra's turn. Maybe they would have. I mean, one of them is probably going to take the Code of Laws, and one of them could definitely take the Warfare too. So taking the irrigation in hopes of getting the Machu Picchu next turn would have also been a little optimistic. But on the other hand, if it worked out, then I would have been able to have something that I can put my resources into in the Machu Picchu. So maybe that would have been worth it to try to do. We'll see what DB Summon and Sakich end up doing, but yeah, this turn definitely in retrospect feels too cute on my end. I draw an aggression and a Cold War. DB Starman increases the population. Takes and elects Columbus. Oh, DB Starman could take Columbus. They never took an H1 leader. Okay, so yeah. Given that DB Starman was probably going to take Columbus, then maybe taking the irrigation in hopes of Machu Picchu being available probably wouldn't have happened, because I think probably Sakich definitely has the science to afford the Code of Laws. So yeah, the irrigation probably would have. Then again, it would have at least been something I could put more resources into. But it's also without the Machu Picchu. Well, there is also the Ocean Liner service, but that's also kind of hopeful. Hard to say. Kind of a difficult. But anyway. DB Starman finally finishes upgrading their mines, though. Sakich Seeds reveals a historic territory. Nobody else is willing to bid on it. I felt that I didn't need it, and I also didn't want to make it obvious to my opponents that I didn't have any bonus cards, so I didn't want to bid on it. And Sakich ends up winning it again for one warrior. Rebuilds that warrior. Come on. Plays the theology. Takes the strategy and plays the strategy. I guess plays the theology because they had nothing else better to do. I mean, maybe the breakthrough, but they have a lot of science anyway. Actually, probably if I read them, I would have taken the call instead of playing that theology. Especially since they don't need the theology for a little while anyway, thanks to the colony. And so instead of playing it, they could have waited for an organized religion. So I do think this was a mistake. They should have taken the call instead. They'll need this call. This early call. But regardless, El Chupacabra's Seeds reveals a good harvest. It's equal for everyone. Takes the first selective breeding, unfortunately, and plays and upgrades it. So I was sad to see that. It definitely would have been helpful for me. I think now I can't really get out of corruption. I do see the Cold War. It's maybe unlikely that I'll be a party for it, but again, I get 4 culture from seeding it thanks to Nostradamus. And I was also kind of hoping to reveal something that might help me get out of corruption, but I don't. Yeah, the good harvest, definitely not good for me. So on this turn, I basically figured that I didn't really want any of these cards. I mean, the Opera could be nice with Marlena, but it's also pretty optimistic for 2 civil actions. Cavalryman, maybe. Breakthrough would have been nice, but I thought that instead I preferred saving the science. I mean, I didn't need to do the revolution to play the monarchy this turn, but it does save me 6 science to do the revolution. And like I said, I didn't feel that the cards I would have taken instead, because I can't do anything on my civilization with 3 food and takes 4 to pop. So given that, I thought that the 6 science I saved from doing the revolution this turn was better than any of the cards I would have taken. But I do have corruption, unsurprisingly, draw strategic territory, war over territory, and the ravages of time. DB Sherman builds a 5th warrior, increase the population, take the scientific method, which they are able to upgrade once this turn, so, and builds a 6th warrior, so unfortunately DB Starman has to stack warriors. Well, I guess doesn't have to, but decided to. So not generally where you want to be, but with the Great Wall, it's not as bad as it would be otherwise, because at least all of these represent 2 strength. I'm not sure, you know, but it is a shame that they're spending, like, so many military actions on this when they could have maybe built swordsmen directly, but that's the eventuality they arrived at. Sakich, not taking the coal last turn ends up being fine because they get a coal for 1 civil action this turn. And they're able to upgrade once. Instead of upgrading a second time, they increase the population. I think upgrading a second time would have been better. I think they're doing this because they want to build a 4th warrior so that they're... The thing is, this warrior doesn't make them not weakest, right? Because after their turn, they'll be tied with El Chupacabra, and I will be... and thanks to Nostradamus, Sakich will still be weakest after their turn. So I think this warrior is actually not helping them at all, and it would have been better for them to get the 2nd coal upgrade this turn. Chupacabra Seeds reveals the Dark Ages. I lose the most to it, unfortunately, so that revolution ends up costing me a little bit. Plays a Swordsman, upgrades twice. So now they are going to be stronger than Sakich on their turn, increase the population, and takes a revolutionary idea and frugality. Now it's my turn. I definitely was glad to see this Rifleman come. It's something that I can invest my resources into. I'll still have corruption, but at least it won't be 4 corruption. So this is good for me. I do play it and upgrade twice. That gives me 2 civil actions left. Somewhat of an interesting decision. I unfortunately don't have enough to take this cannon, but I think that the Rifleman is equally important to me as the cannon is. And as I said, I can play it now to get out of 4 corruption. So I think it is best to do this. As for my 2 remaining civil actions, yeah, so I think I did want this breakthrough. Now I'm feeling a little bit of a science crunch, so the breakthrough I think will help me a fair amount. The Opera is more of a forecasting card, but as mentioned previously, there is Marlena plus Hollywood. So I think whenever there's Marlena in the game, especially if there's also a Hollywood or an internet to a lesser extent, the Opera is always something you want to consider just to leave yourself the possibility of getting Marlena in H3. And I also didn't really have anything better to do with the civil action. I could have taken the journalism, but there's not a ton of journalism synergy. I think, as I said, with Marlena, I think there's more opera synergy than journalism synergy. I didn't need the coal. The Cavalryman also could have been considered just to get potentially H3 tactics. So that's definitely also a possibility to take the Cavalryman. That's very defensible. But I think that, especially like I said with Hollywood, Marlena is such a strong possibility that you want to have the opera in your hand just in case. Did I seed? I didn't seed, notably. I think it's because, oh, I guess it must have been because I was probably afraid. These were probably, because I'm Nostradamus, I know what these are, even though the game is not telling us in the replay. And, these are probably strength events that I was afraid of. So I wanted to increase my strength and preparation. Probably, because I think the Ravages of Time would be fine to see. Anyway, I do discard the territory because with Sakich's colonization bonus and me not having any bonus cards, the chances of me winning any territory seemed very slim. I draw an aggression. DB Starman seeds. So yeah, I wanted to potentially win this foray, especially since it lets me increase my population and finally get rid of those food blue tokens. So I think that was the main reason I didn't seed. I wanted to potentially win this foray. DB Starman also wins it, increases the population, takes a justice system and plays it. Justice system would have been pretty helpful for me, although I wouldn't have been able to play it on my turn anyway. And they take a breakthrough. Seems like a pretty good turn, although doing it this way means they take the breakthrough instead of upgrading their second lab, which is interesting. So this gives them 3 science, but they spend a civil action on it instead of upgrading it this turn. So they're basically spending 1 civil action for 1 science here, which I think is not worth it. Sakich, unfortunately, is able to take the 2nd copy of Selective Breeding. At least the 3rd copy is on the row that I'll be able to get on my turn. Takes a cannon, it does, and upgrades the 2nd mine. So that turn makes sense to me. Chupacabra finishes upgrading their farms, plays a Code of Laws for 6 civil actions now, builds a temple, generally not where you want to be. I think that might suggest there's a rebellion coming. As Nostradamus, I knew, but with this replay, we don't know. Takes an architecture and a reserves and a navigation. That's a lot of technologies they're taking when they only have 4 science income. They do have a revolutionary idea, but this strikes me as a little ambitious. It's my turn. This turn I'm comfortable ceding that Ravages of Time, and I reveal an Uncertain Borders. I don't win it, but I also don't lose it. DB Starman wins it. I obviously really want to get these farm upgrades going. I think that, unfortunately, this is the 3rd turn in a row I'm in corruption. I think I would have still been in corruption even without building that 4th mine. So in that sense, the 4th mine is at least still producing me 2 rocks a turn through the corruption, I think. But yeah, it's an unfortunate situation I landed myself in due to my decisions earlier in the game to not prioritize wonders enough, I think. It is what it is. I do this instead. I take the food from the foray because next turn I'll be able to pop twice. I have to spend all my civil actions on farm upgrade. I mean, I don't have to. I could have popped once, but I think it is best to do this. The extra population would have been unhappy anyway, so it wouldn't have been doing anything. I couldn't put into my military or anything. So I do think this is best. Anyway, I draw a scientific cooperation, strong pact, obviously, a national pride, and a war over technology. DB Storm Seeds reveals a cultural influence. I get nothing from it, unfortunately, but the others don't get that much. Takes Robespierre, plays him, so it looks like they're looking to get probably that Republic. Notably, they choose the Republic for Robespierre instead of the Kanman. It is true they have a 3rd military action with Robespierre, but once they lose Robespierre, they'll be down to 2. So I think this is pretty risky, and if it were me, I would have taken the Kanman. I would have done the Kanman instead of the... Instead, yeah, they had enough science to do the Common Revolution. Maybe they have something planned for next turn with extra science, though. Wait, actually, did they? They had... Because they had, Oh, no, I'm sorry. They only had 4 science in their turn. So, yeah, they could only do the Republic Revolution. So, yeah, that makes sense. Anyway, with their remaining civil actions, they finish upgrading their labs. Oh, but if they had upgraded their lab the previous turn instead of taking the breakthrough, then they would have had enough science for the Kanman. So we can see that like not upgrading their lab this turn had a direct negative impact on their turn on the following turn. Anyway, they also take a patriotism and a rich land. Not so sure about that rich land. Well, I guess they'll probably use it on the irrigations finally. But still, I don't know, 2 if they're only spending it to save 2 wax. Maybe they're planning on potentially building a 3rd one directly. The food situation is definitely a little questionable right now. Anyway, Sakich upgrades their temple, takes the Kanman that DB Starman didn't, finishes upgrading their mines. This looks like a good turn to me. Chupacabra Seeds reveals a wealthy territory. I can't bet that much on it. I don't have any bonus cards. Sakich, unsurprisingly, ends up winning this for 1 warrior, 1 bonus card, and 3 rocks. So they're basically spending 5 rocks to get 9, which is still a bonus for them. They could have put 2 warriors into it instead, but then they wouldn't have lost a tactic. So yeah, they can't rebuild the warrior, so they need to do it this way. Chupacabra increases the population with frugality, builds a 3rd swordsman, so now they're the strongest, and takes the ocean liner service. It's a little late for an ocean liner service, but they'll at least, it looks like they'll still be able to finish it in H2, so it should still give some value to them, though. I do think that the ocean liner service, when it's late, is not that good. It's still fine, but it's not like the super powerful wonder it is when you get it in earlier mid H2. So that's something to note. especially with engineering genius, they'll get it for pretty cheap. They have a lot of civil actions with Saladins, so it should still provide value. Unfortunately, doing it. However, taking the Ocean Line service this turn does mean they suffer corruption on their turn. So this engineering genius is kind of only giving them 2 rocks instead of 4. So that's not good. But I understand why they did this play. Anyway, it's my turn. I do offer the Scientific Cooperation Pact. Obviously, it's a powerful pact, so it's kind of an interesting question who to offer it to. I looked at everyone's situation. I felt that DB Starman was in the best position among all my opponents, not just because they have the culture lead, but we can see that if you compare them to El Chupacabra, right, they have equal rock production, more science, and more civil and military actions, and more culture. So I thought that they definitely had the advantage over El Chupacabra. And while Sakich has more rocks, they are still suffering a little bit in terms of, well, both food and science when compared to DB Starman. DB Starman's major issue, on the other hand, is that they have a bit of a population crisis going, partly because they have so much population into warriors. It's a little bit offset with the vast territory. But the DB Starman is the one who didn't get the selective breeding, and so they have a little bit of a population. I think I didn't really consider that, so you can consider that to be an issue with DB Starman. But on the other hand, thanks to the Great Wall, and they'll also be able to get the Rifleman on this turn because I can't take it. I think that this population issue maybe not a huge deal for them, and I thought that their strong economy still put them in a stronger position. Sakich I also considered, but I think the reason I ultimately didn't offer this pack to Sakich is because that means that the Kanmon plus the selective breeding would only cost them 13 science, and on my turn I won't be playing a second technology along with the Code of Laws. So if I offer the pack to Sakich, Sakich would be able to play the Kanmon and the selective breeding on their turn. I thought that if they did that, their position would get a lot better really quickly, whereas El Chupacabra doesn't have a strong turn to make similarly. And so I think that Sakich and El Chupacabra is arguably in a better position than Sakich. I think it's kind of close, but with the Ocean Liner service, they are probably in a better position. But I think that, like I said, if I offered it to Sakich, this turn of Sakich would be a lot stronger. Whereas El Chupacabra's turn, I don't think will be getting a lot stronger thanks to the pack. So that's why I offered it to El Chupacabra. Anyway, I play the Code of Laws, and I take Napoleon. I think that of the remaining leaders, he is the best one for me. Maria Theresa, if she was available this turn, maybe, but she's not. Gotti, maybe with the opera in my hand. I think I considered Gotti, but I think Napoleon is still very strong. I also have 2 wars in my hand, so Napoleon can definitely give me value there. I also increase my population once. I need to put it into my arena so it's not unhappy. I can also increase my population a second time, and I can finally get out of corruption by building a 3rd lab. I don't put it into my military, but I was definitely starting to feel the science question. I think especially with the Scientific Cooperation Pact, you don't want to fall behind your pact mate in science production. So I think I do have the population, especially with the War of a Territory in my hand. I think I have the population to afford putting it into this lab, and I think I'll probably end up destroying one of these iron mines too. So I wasn't too worried about free population. Discard an aggression, and I draw a bonus card, a historic territory, and a tactic. Not a tactic I'm super well set up for, but at least it is an HD tactic. DB Starman actually declares a war of a territory against Sakich because they are able to finish this Transcontinental Railroad this turn, putting them at 22 strength. As well as they don't actually get farm upgrades yet. Instead, they take a Rifleman and earn Urban Growth. Urban Growth, maybe the farm upgrade, but maybe they don't, I guess just one of these farm upgrades, not too necessary. And the Urban Growth, they probably will find a way to spend at some point. So, I get it. The farm upgrade should have also been considered, though, I think. They do build another warrior to put them at 24 strength for this war. Sakich Siege reveals that Cold War that thankfully... Oh yeah, that's another reason I took Napoleon. It puts me in a position to win the Cold War that I had seeded. So definitely useful there. Especially since Chupacabra didn't know about it when they accepted the pact. So Sakich isn't in a position, unfortunately, to really defend against this war. DB Starman took the second copy of Rifleman, so they're unfortunately still stuck on Warriors. So they basically give up and just do the Revolution for the Kanmon. I guess they didn't like any of these cards in the row. Gotti might have been okay for them, but I get it. You know, James Cook will obviously be very good for them, so they're probably waiting for James Cook. Makes sense. They could have maybe taken the cavalrymen. I think they did have the science to not do the revolution, but I also understand they don't have that much science production, so I understand the logic of the revolution. They don't have corruption either. Yeah. Ton of rocks laying around, notably 33 now. Chupacabra Seas revealing a Buddha conflict. I don't win it, but I don't lose it. Plays a revolutionary idea. Is able to play the Kanmon. They still would have done it anyway without the pact, though, because they lost the science when I played my tech, so it didn't actually help them get to the turn earlier. Chupacabra ends up taking Gotti. He'll be, I would have taken Maria Theresa in Chupacabra's position. I think she would have been really good for them. Definitely better than Gotti. I know 2 civil actions more, but, he also potentially could have just not taken Alita this turn and lost Saladin and taken Maria Theresa next turn, though. Yeah, I don't think they're really doing that much else important. I guess they are getting the journalism, so Gotti will do a little bit for them, although they're not... I mean, I guess with reserves, maybe they're also losing the patriotism, too. Yeah, I'm not too sure about this turn from El Chupacabra. There is logic to it, though. They will have free population thanks to the Ocean Liner Service, so they will be able to get this journalism. They aren't going to get this opera probably, but they might be able to get a movie soon, so I can understand. Gotti also helps them with the Scientific Cooperation Pact, of course. Now, following up D.B. Stroman's war, I declare war against Sakich. This is actually a bit of a risky war. I'll talk about it in a bit when we see my turn. Which I spend on building cannons and finally destroying that mine I built to build a second cannon. Unfortunately, I lack the military actions to for the tactic, but it still puts me at 28 strength. I did the war over technology first because I wanted to get the strategy from Sakich before I declared my war over territory next. Now, it is actually possible for Sakich to defend this war. I think they specifically need the fortifications tactic. But if they had it, then on their turn, they would be able to play the cannon, they could destroy some stuff. They obviously have a bunch of rocks, so theoretically, if they destroyed enough, they would be able to build 6 cannons, which would be, each of them would give 4 strength, so that's 4, 8, 12, 16. Even with 4 cannons, that's plus 16, so that's to 27. And then the fortifications tactic would give them an extra 8 strength, so that would be up to 35. So yeah, basically, if Sakich had the fortifications tactic, then they would actually be able to win this war. So it is a risky war in that sense. On the other hand, the chances that Sakich has the specific tactic are not that high. The event deck hasn't even been fully exhausted yet. And obviously, one of my opponents could have also drawn it. And I also just felt that the upside of this was so big, I was a little bit worried about my position. It was starting to feel like, especially DB Starman, was starting to run away with the game. So I thought that one way that I could still fight for first, even with how kind of sketchy, especially Age 1 and also Age 2 were, was to have this war to take those techs from Sakich. I thought that that could get me back in the game and put me in a position to get first. So I was willing to take this risky war for that reason. I also took a Frugality and an Urban Growth. You know, now I'm only on 6 resource production, so I could definitely use... I mean, the Frugality will obviously help me get more population out. It should be noted that I will have some happy face issues next turn. So one reason to do the war in territory first would have been after winning it, I wouldn't have rebellion issues next turn. I think that I didn't really have a plan for that. So maybe that would have been better. I guess my plan was to just disband one of these riflemen because I don't need them because I'll be playing this tactic next turn. So I figured that it was more important for me to get these techs first, and that disbanding the riflemen to get out of Rebellion was fine because I probably would have ended up doing that at some point regardless. H3 begins. DB Starman ends up getting 3 yellow tokens from Sakich. Plays the Patriotism to finally start upgrading these Warriors to Riflemen. Then disbands one to build a 3rd farm. They definitely need it now that they after delaying their farm upgrades for so long. Also takes that Opera as well as the last copy of Cannons and finishes upgrading their farms. So this turn makes sense to me. Yeah, they are now tied in strength with me. Sakich Seas reveals a civil unrest. Unfortunately, that does hit me. At least it's not, you know, so losing 4 culture and that blue token, definitely not great. Not the end of the world. At least El Chupacabra is losing more culture. Sakich takes James Cook and a Suez Canal, so obviously getting this combo with all these colonies definitely. If Sakich is gonna come back in this game, it's gonna be by doing this. So that makes sense to me. They also take this Cavalryman and plays both of these. Now, notably, Sakich does not actually play James Cook this turn. Instead, plays these 2 technologies. This, I guess the idea was they wanted to get rid of all their science. I wouldn't be able to steal as much of it from them. But I'm going to be winning by 17. I'm going to be taking these 2 techs. So that'll only give me 5 science left that I can take. So this is basically just saving them 3 science, right? Because I'll be taking these 2. So saving the 3 science I otherwise would have been taken. So I guess if they have a tactic in their hand or they have a plan that they'll need both of these for, then it makes sense that they want both of these techs out so they can finally start recovering their strength. And playing James Cook this turn would get them 5 culture, so it definitely hurts not getting that free 5 culture this turn, but I also understand if they really wanted these techs out. They are still piling up a lot of rocks now, though. El Chupacabra Seeds reveals developed territory. I am not able to win it. El Chupacabra does, unfortunately. Wins it with an army plus a bonus card. Rebuilds one of those knights. Plays the architecture to help them finish the ocean liner service. Also plays the navigation. The scientific cooperation is helping them with this, obviously. And takes the Air Force. That makes sense. Uses ocean liner service to build a 4th knight. Not sure why. I think maybe this... I guess this protected them from aggressions, yeah. And takes an organized religion, which they will need soon. So I guess that's the turn makes sense to me. Anyway, now that we're a full turn into H3, we can take a look at the general positions of the game. Economy-wise, so I am now behind rock production of both DB Starman and, thanks to the Wonder, and Sakich, thanks to the coal mines. And Sakich will soon have a lot of rock production, thanks to the Suez Canal. On the other hand, Sakich has been hit by 2 wars at this point, soon to be a 3rd. And so for that reason, Sakich is going to run out of yellow tokens pretty quick. And Sakich is also kind of like... Sakich is going to have a lot of rocks, but they're not using them, right? When the rocks are just piling up on you like this, they're not helpful at all. Like, you'd rather these 30 rocks be replaced by, like, actual other stuff that's doing things instead of just piling up doing nothing. So I think Sakich is definitely, after being hit by those wars and having all these rocks piling up, not accomplishing anything, is in the weakest position. As for the other 3, like I said, in terms of rocks, I'm a little bit behind DB Starman. In terms of science, I'm tied with them. A little bit of El Chupacabra, but I do have the scientific cooperation pact. So in terms of economy, I would say that I'm about tied with DB Starman. If they have an advantage, it's in the civil actions. And also the culture, obviously. They're not that far ahead than me in culture, but they're a fair amount ahead. So I'll need to start working in culture pretty soon. El Chupacabra is closer to me. So I think that I like my position relative to El Chupacabra. Now, El Chupacabra does have the ocean liner service, though, notably. So I'm probably about tied with El Chupacabra, my major advantage being my science situation. and I'm maybe a little bit behind DB Strumman, but again, I have the science advantage. So I think it's pretty close between me, DB Strumman, and Elchupacabra, and H3 will determine which of us wins, whereas Sakich is looking for a way to recover from their position. But anyway, like I said, I still both of those techs and the 2 science Sakich has left from the war, and I declare the war of a territory. I'm pretty confident that I'll be able to win this, especially after playing my tactic to go up to 38 strength. As for the other things I do this turn, obviously I want this Air Forces, but the other thing I do this turn is this oil. So this is the second 4-player game in a row that I've taken oil. However, I think this oil is more justified than the oil was in the last game because it's earlier in H3. This is my, well, a little bit. It's the 4th turn in H3, but it's my first turn in H3. So I think it's definitely early enough in H3 for the oil to be justified. And also, thanks to the Scientific Cooperation Pact and the large amount of science that I have, the science cost of the oil, I think, is a lot easier to bear for me in my position as well. So I do think this oil is good. I do, again, want the Air Forces, obviously. So unfortunately, that means I can only upgrade 1 oil mine this turn if I want the Air Forces, but it's what it's got to be. And I disband a Rifleman to get out of Rebellion. So this turn, I think, was the right turn for me. I draw a bonus card and an Impact of Balance. DB Strumman plays an Opera, so they're starting to really pull ahead in culture now. They also upgrade 1 more warrior to Rifleman, take an Urban Growth, and a Revolutionary Idea. These are good yellow cards. So it looks like, however, they gave up the tank, so they might be planning to just survive on this Legion tactic for the rest of the game. But that's easier to do when you have Great Wall, for sure. Sakich offers a promise of military protection to Elchupacabra, which gets accepted, so they'll be a little bit better in military now. Builds a cannon and a cavalryman. Finally plays James Cook. Unfortunately, yeah, I just played this tactic this turn, so I can't copy it, so I will still be able to get a lot of yellow tokens from them. Elchupacabra Seeds reveals another territory. I bid my Rifleman and both my bonus cards because that won't cost me an army tactic for the war. I wasn't willing to put an army into it for obvious reasons because I would be losing the yellow tokens from the war despite getting them from the territory, so it seemed pointless to me. For that reason, Sakich ends up winning it and is able. So Sakich only loses. I guess Sakich loses 5 strength from this, right? Or, yeah. So Sakich basically only gets 2 yellow tokens from doing this because they're losing an extra yellow token to me from the war. So I wasn't too sad for this result either. Elchupacabra plays the organized religion and the journalism with Gotti, increase the population to build a journalism and upgrade to a temple. So now they are getting some cultural protection going with Gotti. That makes sense to me. Takes an endowment for the arts. Not too sure about that. I guess they'll be able to get 4 culture from it, probably, which is okay, but what else do? They take the tanks. I mean, I think the efficient upgrade... I mean, maybe they might be able to get computers later, for example, or instead of taking these 2, they could have taken the engineering, for example. Well, they have the architecture. So maybe they just didn't have anything better to do on their turn with the civil action. Maybe playing the reserves for rocks would have been better than taking this endowment, though. And gets a 4th army. So I end up getting 5 yellow tokens with the war, so definitely 2 strong wars for me. I seed, I forget what card that was now, unfortunately. Reveal an emigration. Impact to balance, back to balance. That doesn't hit anyone. I am able to finish upgrading my mind, so I definitely want to do that. And after that, I kind of have to decide, okay, how am I going to win this game? So as we can see, DB Strumman and Elchupacabra are both starting to run away with the culture. And there's not that, we still have a lot of time in HD, but I still need to decide how I'm going to win this game. And so, one question is, do I want to go... I don't think I need to decide whether to go peaceful or military yet. I'm in a position where I can easily go military if I end up drawing wars, maybe an H3 tactic or something. Unfortunately, Chupacabra took the tanks away from me. There is one copy of tanks left, though. So I could still, with the Air Forces, too, I'm definitely in a position to war if I end up drawing a war and it's looking like I can get one going easily. But I also think I don't have to. With these, with the oil mines going, I'm definitely more flexible. And so, because I didn't want to necessarily rely on a war in order to win, I decided to end up taking the engineering and the internet. I thought that thanks to all the resources I'm getting from my oil mines, I should be able to build a bunch of urban buildings. And the engineering will obviously both help with that and make it easier to finish the internet. The internet is certainly not the most exciting wonder. I have seen it be very strong, I'll say that. Now, the weakness basically of taking the internet now is it means I'm not getting the Hollywood. But I was a little worried. I mean, DB Starman and El Chupacabra, especially DB Starman, El Chupacabra if they get in movies, they're both in a position to get the Hollywood themselves. And so I was a little worried that if I didn't take the internet this turn, obviously it would be discarded, and I would be leaving it up to chance of maybe one of my opponents would take the Hollywood before I could, and then I would be left without a wonder. And without a wonder, I think I have no hope of winning peacefully. And like I said, I thought that with my oil production, I did at least have the possibility to get a good internet going. I can get Pierre would help with that. Would certainly help with that. Einstein can also gives an extra +3 to your internet. Molena potentially. So there's a lot of leaders that can help me with my internet. And so for that reason, and with the engineering, I felt that the internet would actually be a good wonder for me. And like I said, it guarantees me a way to potentially be able to win peacefully. And as for my last civil action, I just play the engineering. I could have maybe increased my population instead. I think I wanted to play it. I think maybe I was a little afraid that like El Chupacabra might cancel the scientific cooperation or offer another pact to cancel it. So I think I wanted to make sure to play technologies while the scientific cooperation pact was ongoing. And I was going to use it next turn because next turn I was going to start building operas. You could say, however, increasing the population would be better because it would leave me maybe a little more open to a war. On the other hand, I will still have more than enough science to play the Air Forces. So, anyway, I draw 2 aggressions in the military alliance. DB Starman Seeds reveals the Ravages of Time. They destroy their Acropolis. DB Starman builds a cannon, takes and plays the military theory, and builds a second opera, and takes a revolutionary idea. Sakich builds a second cannon and a second cavalryman, and copies my mobile artillery tactics, so they have finally recovered their strength, and takes the Manhattan Project to help them with strength further, as well as the mechanized agriculture. They haven't upgraded their farms yet, so they can instead go straight to mechanized agriculture, although I'm not sure if they'll have the science. Well, maybe not for either of them. Chupacabra Seeds reveals the autonomous territory that I do put a lot into. I think this is the strongest territory, and so I was willing to put a lot into it. I ended up winning it just for an army and 1 bonus. Well, not just for. I mean, this is a pretty significant cost, but I do think it's worth it. It is somewhat of an interesting question what to take with it. I end up taking the science because I felt that with the oil mines, I'm not really hurting for rocks at this point. And I think with the urban growth and the engineering, 2 operas is only going to cost me 8 rocks. And so after that, I'll still have enough to rebuild my army. So I didn't need the rocks, and I thought the science was more likely to be good for me, especially since ideally I am looking to get a Age 3 government form if possible, especially a democracy. Or maybe a fundamentalism if I draw war. El Chupacabra, but second temple to get out of rebellion, plays that endowment for culture, as said previously, takes Winston Churchill and patriotism and another patriotism, so it looks like El Chupacabra maybe has a war they're planning on doing in this game. Notably doing that endowment of the arts play means that El Chupacabra can't take this rockets or this multimedia. I do cede my impact. I'm not strongest, so I end up losing the crime wave, but I think that was an impact of balance. I think it's a good impact for me that I wanted in the deck. This turn I take Einstein. Like I said, I'm still, I haven't started my culture production yet, so I'm definitely pretty far behind in culture of all my opponents. So I wanted to get one of these leaders, and I thought that Einstein was going to be the best one. I was also planning on taking the multimedia this turn, so I thought that Einstein was going to be would get me Einstein would be more helpful than Chaplin. He would get me the same amount of cultural per turn plus extra science, so I thought it would be better. And also the Mercury. Unfortunately, we can see that actually on my turn, the Hollywood and Charlie Chaplin are both available. So if I hadn't taken the internet, not taking the internet would have ended up being better for me, but I couldn't have known that would happen, obviously. So I do decide to play Einstein this turn, and like I said, I do take the multimedia and build it, so starting to get value from Einstein. And that still leaves me with enough civil actions and rocks to rebuild my army so that I'm not weakest anymore. It does leave me with corruption, unfortunately. I think actually that the crime wave ends up costing me corruption. So that is a downside of doing it this way. But at least I have the oil mines to somewhat offset that corruption. And I do draw a war along with an H3 tactic, although one that requires tanks. And an impact of colonies, which I will not cede. Deep Starman cedes, reveals their freedom of movement. Uses it to get a third opera going from their lab. So now they don't have a lot of science production, but they do have 2 revolutionary ideas to offset that, so that should be fine. They build a cannon, take the air forces, and an engineering genius, and Chaplin, who's elected, and Hollywood. So D.B. Starman definitely is pushing culture hard, and if I don't, it's with Chaplin plus Hollywood plus these 3 opera goings, unless something major happens, it might be hard for me to overtake D.B. Starman in this game. Socket finishes Manhattan Project to actually become strongest, and take some movies and reserves, although won't be able to play movies next turn, and an efficient upgrade. Chupacabra does indeed cancel the Scientific Cooperation Pact finally after I play Einstein. Takes a Pro Sports with Gotti, builds 1, so gets some more culture going with Gotti. Plays Winston Churchill, and uses him to, along with the patriotism, to upgrade some tanks, and play a Hussars tactic with those tanks. So I am actually weakest now, and takes a revolutionary idea. So after my opponents pushed strength pushed strength like this, it was looking pretty unlikely that I would get a big war going. I do offer a military alliance pact to Sakich, who I still think is my weakest opponent, to help me with my strength a bit. But yeah, at this point, I was thinking that probably this is my second to last turn anyway, and I wouldn't be able to get a big enough war going for the military path to be worth it. So I wanted instead to focus on winning peacefully, possibly. At least I'm able to get a democracy going this turn. Oh, I used the freedom of movement to get rid of my last rifleman and put in multimedia, and I'm able to build a third multimedia too. So at least I have finally a fair amount of culture going. Multimedia is obviously better than operas for the internet, so I want to focus on them first. I want to also increase my population, and I'm able to build a 4th multimedia too. So at least, it's a little late in the game, but I'm finally competing with my opponents in terms of culture production now. And I'm looking like I'll get a pretty good internet. So I wanted to play the opera this turn because I thought that likely the age was going to end before my next turn. So the age ends before I play the opera, then I obviously won't be able to play it at all. Now, on the other hand, I won't have enough rocks for it anyway, though. So I think, I'm not sure if I didn't consider that or if I had some sort of plan. Maybe I was hoping that, like, there's a possibility the age won't end before my next turn and I will be able to build some operas. But I think, in retrospect, this was a mistake and I should have taken this urban growth instead to potentially I could potentially be able to use it maybe on the... Yeah, I wouldn't be able to use it on the movies and still be able to finish the internet, but I could have, if the computers cycled back to me, I could potentially use this urban growth to upgrade that, or I could also use the urban growth to build a 4th alchemy. Yeah, so, which at least would have given me an extra +2 for the internet. So I think taking this urban growth would have been better than playing opera and taking tanks. Oh, actually, I think I probably also played the opera because I was worried about getting the full Einstein value from playing text with him, right? Because this way, next turn, I will have 22 science, and that's just enough to play both the air forces and the tanks. Whereas if I take the urban growth, then I was a little concerned about would I be able to play 3 technologies with Einstein. So the value of this opera here, even if I can't build any operas, it gives me 3 culture with Einstein. And if I didn't play it this turn and I lost it to the end of the age, and I took the urban growth, then I would only have the air forces with 29 science. And so the only... Yeah, both mech ags are gone. So I think it actually... I needed to play the opera this turn in order to be able to play 3 text total with Einstein. So yeah, that was actually right, I think. I draw an impact of strength. I didn't see the impact colonies. So I didn't... sorry, I put the back this turn. So I draw an impact of strength, impact of culture, impact of agriculture. Impact of culture, I might be able to use to succeed. Stone plays the revolutionary idea, increases the population, builds an air forces, and takes the pro sports, and an urban growth, and an oil. Socketch Seeds reveals an independence declaration. This is unfortunately really bad for me because I am forced to lose the autonomous territory. So definitely a very unfortunate event to be in the deck for me. Socketch takes computers, upgrades them. Unfortunately is doing this after finishing the Manhattan Project, but that's how it goes sometimes. And takes the rockets. Is supposed to take corruption. We can see all these rocks not really doing much for Socketch. Triple Copper Seeds reveals a historic territory. I was not willing to bid anything in this because obviously all my rocks next turn are going to be tied up in finishing the internet. And if I was afraid if I bid on this colony, then I would be way too vulnerable to multiple aggressions. So I didn't think it was worth it for me. DB Starman ends up winning it, puts a bunch into it, but they're still at 33 strength afterwards. Chupacabra takes a military theory, a reserves, builds a 2nd arena, so it looks like they might have impact of competition in the deck, and plays the military theory. So age 4 begins, and I have everyone has 1 turn in age 4. I do see that impact of culture, because basically the reason I see that impact of culture is I did some math, and thanks to the Hollywood. And DB Starman's, thanks to DB Starman having Hollywood and already having a culture lead, it was looking extremely unlikely that I was going to be able to overtake them. So I thought that even though there was a good chance that DB Starman would win the impact of culture, I would at least get 2nd, and that would help guarantee me getting 2nd in this game. I thought that there was maybe an outside chance that DB Starman, I think right now I actually have a bit more culture production than DB Starman. So I thought that was possible. DB Starman, DB Starman doesn't have the science for an age 3 government form. So, they might not actually, well, they will be able to build a multimeter. So the DB Starman probably will get more culture production than me, but like I said, I felt that I wasn't going to be able to beat them anyway, and maybe they won't and will do other things with their resources instead, and will let me win the impact of culture, and that might be one way for me to potentially win. Anyway, I do end up at least getting 35 culture from the internet, so as we can see, the internet can give you a fair amount of culture sometimes, if you set up for it right. So, that's at least a huge surge of culture for me, obviously. Don't have much else to do with my turn. I do destroy a lab to build an arena to help me with a potential impact of happiness. And I take a satellites. I preferred playing the satellites over the tanks because it helps more with a potential impact of progress. and I guess it helps my strength a little bit. And I play the Air Forces for the last tech I play with Einstein. And I end up taking the communism. I can't take the democracy because I played it already. So I figured, and I can't take the multimedia because I played it already. So I thought that the communism... Maybe I should have taken the movies to deny that possibility to DB Sturman, actually. Yeah, I think that was a mistake. DB Starman ends up playing a building pro sports, actually, interestingly, and not the multimedia or the movies. So at least, so the impact of culture is at least helping me in that sense. The Hollywood gives them 24 culture though, and they take that multimedia. Sakic takes Marlena. Alexa is able to get a little bit of value out of her with 2 movies, though. Sakic does end up losing, oh no. Sakic had enough food that they're not in Phantom. Chupacabra Seeds reveals an impact of government, so I get a little bit less cultural than I normally would, thanks to losing my autonomous territory, but at least I don't get that much fewer. I tie with DB Starman and El Chupacabra. Plays Air Forces, builds 1 Air Force and a mine, so it looks like there's an impact of industry on the deck. And builds a farm, maybe an impact of agriculture. So we can see, and gets 3 culture with Churchill. So we can see before the final impacts, DB Starman is well in the lead, 30 culture ahead of me, and I am turn and 21 culture ahead of El Chupacabra, who is 22 ahead of Sakic. So there are 6 impacts on the deck, so it's possible that these positions might change, but well, I think DB Starman is almost certainly going to win, and probably the final results will end up being in this order, but it's possible that the impacts might change the order of the other players. So the first is that impact of culture I seeded, so it ends up definitely being a good impact for me, but unfortunately, DB Starman obviously gets second, so I only catch up 5 culture to them. Second one is an impact of population. I catch up 2 culture to DB Starman, but it's mostly good for El Chupacabra thanks to that ocean liner service. It's pretty bad for Sakic, I think, because they have an unhappy worker. Next is an impact of balance that I see that ends up being pretty good for me overall. I get 6 culture over DB Starman. El Chupacabra gets 2 over me, though I did get that 3 from seeding it. Next is the impact of harmony. This, unfortunately, is not as good for me. DB Starman gets further ahead from me. It's most good for El Chupacabra, so they probably are the one who seeded that. So they're getting a little bit close to me, so I'm starting to sweat a little bit. But the next one is an impact of science, so at this rate, I am quite confident that I'll be able to beat El Chupacabra. And now I'm actually, thanks to this, I am only 6 culture behind DB Starman. So despite everything, it is possible for me to win this game if the right impact comes up. But unfortunately, it's the impact of variety, which DB Starman gets 2 more culture than I do, which means that DB Starman ends up winning this game by 8 total points. Looking over this game again, I think I definitely made several mistakes, especially in Age 1. I think that I didn't properly appreciate how getting all those rocks early. It's unfortunate because I think I had a very strong start by getting the Roman roads finished on turn 3 and an early iron. I think that's an extremely strong start, but I think I didn't take advantage of it enough because I didn't properly prioritize getting a wonder, basically. I ended up prioritizing the monarchy that I think wasn't that good for me in the end, but in particular, I think prioritizing Nostradamus over the Great Wall was the game-losing play for me. The Great Wall would have been a great way for me to spend those extra rocks that I had. I think it would have let me most likely avoid corruption for the entire game if I had it. And also, obviously, would have denied the Great Wall from DB Starman. And the Great Wall was extremely helpful for DB Starman because it basically let them exist purely off of infantry for all of Ages 1 and 2 without ever worrying about their strength, and indeed it let them get a good war going against Sakic earlier, as we saw. So I think probably if I had taken the Great Wall instead of Nostradamus, and if I had waited for Michelangelo then too as my Age 1 leader, I think it's hard to say if I would have won the game. The game would have changed a lot if that had happened, but I think that it would have put me in a much stronger position than I ended up being in. And then obviously building that 4th iron mine, I think ended up being not awful for me, but definitely didn't really help me that much, and it was a little bit too cute. So those, I think, were the 2 major mistakes I made in this game. Though despite them, I still actually ended up being only 8 culture behind DB Starman. So I think I actually played Age 3 pretty well overall. You know, I probably made a couple more minor mistakes, since you always do, but I think it was definitely those 2 mistakes earlier in the game that cost it for me. Now we can take a quick look at the standings, and I took the screenshot after my opponents finished their 3-player game, and we can see that DB Starman, despite winning one 4-player game in time for first and the other one, ended up coming in last in that 3-player game, whereas El Chupacabra won it. And so because of that result, DB Starman and El Chupacabra are both tied for first in the group, whereas I am third after my relatively subpar results in the 3-player games. Sakich got second in the 3-player game, so they have some points on the board at least. Now, because of those results, DB Starman and El Chupacabra definitely both have the advantage in this group over me, but if I can win a 3-player game, I'll be only maybe 1.5 or 3.5 points behind both of them. So if I do well in the remaining 3- and 2-player games, I can definitely overtake them and still finish first. But I am at a disadvantage, so if I want to have a chance of finishing first in this group, I certainly have to lock in and play at my best in those remaining games. Sakich also still has a chance to definitely avoid finishing last, and maybe potentially finishing first if everything goes right for them. But certainly everyone still has a lot to play for in the remaining games, so I do hope that you tune into those as well. As always, please leave a comment if you have any thing to say about either my play or my video making. I really appreciate any comment I receive. And regardless of whether you leave a comment or not, I hope you enjoy this video and that I see you again in the future.